Yeah, so I just want to shoot this video to SharePoint developers and architects. Yes, I'm back. Deshaun is back. I know you're saying, come on, Deshaun, no more bad news about we're losing jobs and all this other good stuff. But, I think I'm meeting with clients. I'm talking to some of my colleagues. I'm conversating with folks on LinkedIn and Twitter. And it's just like, I really feel that some SharePoint developers and architects just do not realize the shift that is happening in the SharePoint and O365 space and the things that you've been working on traditionally, especially if you are SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2007, if you're still developing on those platforms, when you go to, like, if your company, or if you're, even worse, if you're a consultant, and if, when you try to hit the marketplace, most of the clients are looking for, especially from consultants, they're looking for expertise on how to get them from either 07 to O365, 2010 to O365, or 2013 to O365. And if you are working on just traditional WSP development, just, web parts, event receivers, custom master pages, doing all these list schemas and site column schemas and content type schemas and deploying all that stuff via WSP, you're not ready for the shift that's happening. And I anticipate that it is happening now. I mean, the traction of the migration to the cloud is happening now. Now, this is what's going to happen. I'll say 4 things are going to happen. One, a lot of SharePoint developers are just going to be left in the wind, only because that the traditional server-side code, C#, Visual Studio, WSP packaging, feature event receivers, and all this other good stuff, all that's going away, right? That capability is not there in the cloud. Even if you are able to pull it off with sandbox solutions, I think that's even been announced as being deprecated. So even if you try to do it nicety, right, and do like definition only and all this other good stuff, that model is going away. So if you are not developing using CSOM API, look at the PNP, the Partner Pack, the PNP core. If you're not leveraging that type of stuff to build APIs and add-ins, I would say full immersion add-ins. Don't do the app part, right? Or the add-in part, which is a weird thing to say, but you should not be focusing on that. The only reason why you should be working on CSOM and the add-in model if you're doing full immersion, right? You have to get skilled up and transfer your skills to use JavaScript. Bottom line, because that's just the way. I mean, that's just the way. Even if you're moving to 20, just say even this. Say, for example, your client is not ready to move to the cloud for whatever reason. They're scared, it's regulatory, they don't trust it, security concerns, blah, 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 blah. Even if they don't trust it and you're migrating to SharePoint 2013, if you're an architect or if you're a developer, you should have a roadmap to convert all that server side to use a client side or a service-oriented architecture. Why? One, because it's going to just protect your upgrade. Right? You should not be looking at a content DB upgrade from 2010 to 2013. Even if it's, fight that tooth and nail, even if that's the fastest route, which I know it is, you're shooting yourselves in the foot, because you're just going to box yourself in and you're not going to do justice for that client, for that customer, for your employer to prep them for the future, right? The second one is, if you're moving from 07 to 2013, and I'm just doing this on-prem scenario because, I think that's majority of the argument for those who are not going to the cloud. You can't do a content migration anyway. So you're going to be using like a content matrix migration tool or a ShareGate migration tool or whatever the case may be. You should be migrating that content list to list, document to document, but all of the custom web parts and all this other good stuff, you should be rewriting in a JavaScript client-side oriented architecture. And the major reason why, even if you're still on-prem, is for 2 reasons. One, your company is going to the cloud eventually, even if it's a hybrid model, which I think would probably be the easiest entrance into the cloud. eventually everyone's going to be in the cloud. I mean, we're having this conversation in 2020, totally different landscape on what's happening. So, just say, say for example, they're going to the cloud. So this will only get your team and prepping your team to start coding using cloud standards today, with the anticipation that you guys will be going to the cloud in 2 years and 3 years and 4 years. You're building that model. You understand like the nuances between the latency, calling CSOM code, building all that custom code on remote servers that are not part of your SharePoint farm. They're just plain vanilla Windows Windows servers, and you got your CSOM set up. You're building REST API on the front end. You're using JavaScript, Angular, maybe Twitter Bootstrap, and you're still doing the responsive design thing. That's the play. Even if you're going to 2016, that's the play, right? Now, for those who are moving to the cloud, and you kind of get a sense that, a taste that your client or your employer has the cloud on their roadmap, and a good indicator is that Exchange is out there, right? So whatever regulatory, security, and all this other good stuff, if you're putting your corporate mail out in the cloud, then the SharePoint story becomes that more simplistic, right? Because whatever you figured out to make it work in Exchange, that's just going to trickle down and work on the SharePoint side, the OneDrive side, what have you. So you have to get prepared for this cloud type development, because it's the stuff that you're practicing, the model that you have in place now, the best practices you have in place now that's centered around WSPs, they just won't work out there, right? And even if it's a WSP that's sandbox enabled and only works within the confine of a site collection, yada yada yada, it's just not going to work in the cloud, in O365. And I think what, another thing that you have to take a look at and you have to consider when you go out to O365, you have to keep a pulse on what Microsoft is doing. You have to get connected to how these guys are, what's on their roadmap, what features that they plan to add to the baseline, to the out of the box, to make sure that you are not duplicating customization. Like, in the way that I usually approach this, like any client that's in O365 and they believe from a requirement standpoint, and sometimes, the business has a sense of what's out of the box and they kind of say, oh, this is custom, or based on what they did in the past is custom. And it may be valid. I mean, there may be a valid custom process or a solution that the client needs that's going to be pure custom, and you're going to have to be customizing in the cloud. That's inevitable, right? I mean, I think, the out of the box is going to make the business so much faster to an extent, to be able to do a process to an extent. Most of the customizations that we kind of see in O365 is just minimizing the number of clicks, right? It's not that core based customization that we have on-prem where, how do we brand this thing to, give it the company feel and color and all this other good stuff. That's a conversation that you can negotiate, and there's best practices on how to do that in the cloud. But most of the the customization on-prem is really like, how do I get this responsive design, or how do I build this process, or you have this enormous workflow, or you have to integrate with line of business and all this other good stuff. That's still going to be out there. But what you put on the SharePoint side and the way you're able to hook it on the SharePoint side is going to be more so the client side development. So I think from architects and developers, I just see and I feel, because I think some of you guys are just stuck, right? Just because of the state of the union of where you are and where you guys are going. I mean, there's this industry, right? This SharePoint, this Microsoft SharePoint O365 industry is moving much faster since May 4th of this year. They've been moving so much faster and added so much features to SharePoint and O365, probably combined to the past 3 years. In the past, now it's October, so May would have been, 5 months? In the past 5.5 months, they probably produced more features in SharePoint and O365 than the past 3 years combined. right? I mean, you can add up 2010, 2013, and even what they did with 2016. For 2016 on-prem was hardly anything. You hardly saw any new features come out other than the feature pack that just got released like 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? So, this thing is just moving so fast, and being especially a developer. Now, the architects, you can kind of go out there and fill it out because you're going to be more, how do you migrate them over, how you going to, map their requirements and all this other good stuff. But as far as developers, you have to retool. You have to get into the JavaScript. You got to get into the TypeScript. You got to get into the React framework, either AngularJS framework, and get into that client-side development. Now, if that's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. Like, from here, I think the natural progression would probably be like, I don't think anyone's doing like pure .NET solutions anymore. You may find some MVC or whatever, but whatever they're building, they want it to scale, so it's going to have a cloud component to it, either that you're hosting those services in Azure, AWS, or cloud. Either you're spinning up a VM or you're using the app services that are designed to optimize endpoints or, wherever the case may be. But that's where you're going. But I just think the future is definitely the cloud for SharePoint. And I'm actually wondering if this thing will even be called SharePoint, just how interconnected this thing is in O365. You saw the Microsoft Teams piece. I mean, that, it has some bits in SharePoint. I think you can bring those bits in as tabs, but, most of these components like Power App, Flow, these are apps that sit outside of SharePoint and meant to be used in the O365 ecosystem as a whole, right? Bringing in those external systems, third-party systems, even a line of business systems, as long as the service enabled, it can consume anything. I mean, if you're trying to integrate your SAP ERP, all you have to do is put a REST endpoint on top of it. It can integrate with anything, right? You figure out the OAuth, the security, and the firewall holes and all this other good stuff. But, you can integrate anything as long as you service enable it. Even in databases, right? I mean, it's so much easier with the latest versions of SQL, even on SQL 2012, 14, or wherever the case may be. But, even those have solutions that are easily, to service enable those types of things. But, I just feel, because, I've been with SharePoint for like the past 12 years or so, and been in the industry for the past 15, 16 years. And I really do. I mean, I love SharePoint. And I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood platforms, only because the folks that, the architects and the developers, the ones that really are supposed to promote its capabilities to the business and get the business to understand its capabilities, allow the business to categorize it as a website, or allow the business to categorize it as just a file system for managing documents, where it's so much more than that, right? As far as like collaboration, keeping documents out of email, real-time collaboration, that's a whole, don't get me started with all of these products that Microsoft is coming up with as far as, Teams and O365 groups and, legacy team sites and modern team sites, all this other jazz. Don't get me started on the differences between those minute, differences between those, and, why one should go with one versus the other. I think it's really just a preference thing. But, I think that's the true, value of SharePoint is the collaboration. Because understand this, and I'm gonna let you go because I don't want this video to be too long, but understand this, the business in this new era have to move at a high rate of speed from a competition standpoint at a business level, not talking about IT department, not talking about the marketing, just the business level and how they service their customer, or how they service, the customer, either be in or B2B. That rate of exchange and transaction is increased, right? So from when you go from a thought process to an actual product or feature in production, that process needs to happen and it's happening now at the light of speed, where, where Amazon is deploying to production 3 or 4 times a day, right? And in the SharePoint project, we may deploy once every 3 months, once every 6 months. right? So that type of speed is just is unheard of in this new digital era, and that's why I think the cloud is going to be ultra important, because they're going to be burning the candle from both ends. You're going to have Microsoft constantly adding, and here's the thing: Microsoft adds new features to O365. Let me say O365 in general, every other Friday. And I would say SharePoint probably at least once a month. New features, and this is at least bug fixes every other Friday. So you got this out of the box capability that's increasing, and then you have from your custom piece, your custom solution, increasing. You have to burn that candle from both ends. But whatever you're doing on the custom solution side, you have to have a pulse on what Microsoft is doing, so that way you're not customizing something that Microsoft is going to release. And then, the whole agile piece, that whole project methodology, it only works in this environment. Waterfall would not work in this environment. By the time you go off 3 months, gather all the requirements, come up with, the technical spec, and then chop it out and then phase it into the development life cycle and then start QAing and boom, boom, boom. That's a 6-month process, right? By the time you get through that entire process, one, the market behavior has changed. The need for it has changed. And what you build, if you're not bringing in your consumers along the ride, right? Engaging them throughout the process, doing demos every 2 weeks at minimum throughout the process to confirm with the business that, hey, this is how this thing works. Does it meet your business needs? No. Okay, what tweaks do we need? Are those high priority? Do those need to go now, or can they wait to the next sprint? That type of conversation, Agile is the only model that works for that, right? So I'm really, really excited, but I just really feel that some of my colleagues are. It's unfortunate, but I think some of my colleagues are missing the boat, because they're not staying too low. Now, what do you do? I'm going to leave you with this. What can you do if you are stuck in an environment to where you're working on 2007, 2010, and that's all you do? You're right. You may be in new feature mode. You may be in support mode. End of life of 07 is coming up, October 2017 or something like that. So you're getting ready for this migration, but you're stuck. And this world outside of your building, outside of your circle, outside of your company is moving at a much faster pace than we've ever seen before. What can you do now? And I'm going to tell you, you should be working more than 8 hours. I have a client that I'm working with now that, we're actually about to wrap up, and, I'm looking for another client to work with. But I have to work 12 to 16 hours a day. Right, I do my 8 to 9 hours with this client, but then once that's done, I go and spend time with my family, and I have a pretty large family. I have five little ones, and then my wife and I. So it's a house of 7. If you count the 2 dogs, it's 9. Right, so a pretty large family. A lot going on. A lot of different schools and programs, sports, after school programs, homework. Hey, Dad, this. Hey, Dad, that. Are you coming to this recital? So it's like a whirlwind that's going on. But my wife is holding it down, and she pulls me in when and where I'm needed. So when I come home, I spend like a 3-hour block with the family. We go through homework, we do dinner, and all this other good stuff. I really just interact with them. And but after that, it's learning time. After that, from 9:30 to around midnight, it's trial and error, because it's so easy now. There's no excuse, because it's so easy to replicate environments in O365. One, there's a free way to do it. If you do a Google search on O365 developer program, right, or developer, it's either developer program or developer preview, you can get a free trial of O365 for 12 months, right? So you go in there, you sign up, it's absolutely free. I don't even think you have to give a credit card. Just give them an email address, boom, 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 you're ready to go, you're ready to rock and roll. So you have access to everything, right? The Azure piece, that one you probably have to pay a little bit money, but a little bit money is like $10 a month max, right? You shouldn't have to go out there and create VMs and all this other good stuff. You should be using the app services to host your REST API endpoints. But you have access to the entire O365 suite, right, either free or at most $20 a month. If you get the, I think it's E3 version and all this other good jazz. But I mean, you can get it cheaper than that. But you have access to really start playing around with these new features. And as a developer, you should be learning what do you get for free out of the box before you start developing anything. And that's the biggest mistakes most of the developers make. Most of the developers will just jump in and start developing, not knowing that that's out of the box, or that's a power user function, or you can do that in Power Apps and Flow, or you can just do that with Flow, or that's a workflow, or whatever the case may be. They go off and start building, right? Especially if you don't need it to be at scale, meaning that every site within your tenant needs to have, this workflow. That's a different story or a different approach than, oh, I have this business user that needs this workflow that approves documents, or every site within the site collection needs a flow or a workflow to, workflow approval and all this other good stuff. Most of that is probably you can get done with power tools. But you have to understand, like, what are the capabilities out of the box, understanding the difference between the legacy site, modern site pages, modern team sites, O365 group sites, and now the Microsoft Teams sites. You have to understand the differences, the pros and cons with all of that. And you only can get it by doing. There's no article, right? There may be thoughts right there, but this stuff is too new. Even Microsoft doesn't have all the documentation to support it. Not the depth. They have the marketing stuff, right? They know how to push it. They know how to sell it. They're really good at that. But as far as like supporting and highlighting the nuances and all this other good stuff, you're not going to get that through their write-up, right? And let me tell you this, there's no training out there that's going to give you that. So the training is you doing it, proving it, setting it up, thinking of your current business scenarios that you heard of in the past, or making up scenarios and just working through that process. Like, if you look at my training videos on YouTube, I haven't gotten to the 365 stuff. I did one like 2 or 3 years ago that's still very helpful for those who are, using 2010 and 2010 and 2013, because the features were very close at that point. But since May 4th, 2016, O365 is here, and even SharePoint 2016 is here. Right? I mean, there's a huge gap in capability on what's available in 365 versus what's on-prem. And that, my friend, is what's going to push more companies to the cloud, even if they do hybrid. I respect the fact that there is a core piece of the business that cannot go out in the cloud for whatever reason. But even if they do hybrid, it says, you know what, that core that's integrated with SAP or our CRM or whatever other system on-prem, that piece needs to stay here. But all this project work, or what used to be our extranet, all that work, or any department sites that don't deal with highly classified information or core business stuff that may be services to other departments within the organization, all their department stuff, those can go out to the cloud, and you can make it hybrid to where you can search and interact and all this other good stuff. So I think that gap in feature rich is what's going to push a lot of companies out there. But as of right now, I mean, if you are any type of SharePoint professional, business analyst, power user, PM, definitely architect, and absolutely definitely SharePoint developer, you should be having your own personal tenant to where, some gap, you should be dedicating 6 to 12 hours, 6 to 20 hours a week on just you learning and getting familiar with that stuff. Because if you're a consultant, there's no reason why you're not doing this. Because when a client comes to hire you, that's their expectation. That you either been out here or you have a pretty good handle on what's going on out here in the O365 world. So anyway, just a little rant. I just wanted to share that with you, my thoughts. But this O365 thing is just taking off, and it's moving fast. It's moving extremely fast, faster than historically we ever known it to be. But guess what? Microsoft is late to the game. I mean, they are. I mean, Amazon's been doing this since day one. Facebook's been doing this since day one. Google's been doing this since day one. Microsoft played the on-prem, the laptop, the thick client game. For a while, it kind of ignored mobile try to come up with their own OS and all this other good stuff. Finally discontinue that and, learning to play nice with everyone else, getting rid of all their proprietary Microsoft isms, right? Going more open source and industry standard, especially when it comes to JavaScript, which is a good thing. Because you don't have to learn, right? Once you master Gulp and Yeoman and Node.js and NPM packages and how to pull all that down, either if you use Visual Studio Code or if you use Sublime, or I'm not sure if Eclipse is meant for, client-side JavaScript development. I know that's a big Java thing. But, even if you have your IDE of choice, you're used to the utilities, right? You're used to the utilities. You don't have to go, Visual Studio Enterprise, NuGet package, and, understand all those nuances and, all the Microsoft isms to try to figure things out. The only thing you have to focus on at that point is SharePoint, right? But, the development story becomes very streamlined and more industry standards versus Microsoft isms. So, even if you learn that stuff, I think is just going to help you in the long run. I'm even looking at, I'm so long-winded, sorry. I'm even looking at hybrid SharePoint development with hybrid mobile app development with Ionic in Angular 2.0. And when I take a look at that stuff, it's 90% transferable from what I've been using for the SharePoint development framework. 90%. Is TypeScript, Gulp, Yeoman tasks, all this other stuff, Yeoman generators, all this other stuff, 90% the same. I can do it in Visual Studio Code, and my IDE remains the same. It's just I'm coding for a mobile app, right? Hybrid with the Cordova framework and all this other good stuff versus SharePoint with, out-of-the-box REST API and all this other good stuff. And then if I have a REST API component, right, because I need to do a single sign-on with Facebook or Twitter or wherever the case may be, that's just REST API, consuming that REST API, the OAuth token, and all this other good stuff. OAuth, I'm not that strong in. I'm still building that. I use a lot of kits like Firebase and some other kits used for the identity piece. But my point is, consuming the REST API is the REST API, regardless of who's the provider. And that's what the industry wanted to go with. They didn't want you to consume a weather service and they have their own weird XML schema and how they position the data and all this other good stuff, or like SOAP service or WCF, all these other ones. They're doing this commonality between them. As a developer, an endpoint is an endpoint regardless of which provider is hosting it, even if it's custom, right? So that's it. I just wanted to rant, but I wish you guys well. I think this video may find its way on YouTube and probably Facebook. I monitor all social media, so at any given time, feel free to leave me a comment. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Deshaun Clark. Okay, take care, guys. Have a good day.